Actually, before this, I must admit, I listened to a couple of your other podcast interviews, and I think agentic payments is something that I've heard you speak about as well. And I think it's so interesting because you're almost, of course, in today's world, it's a lot about it. It's around AI adoption, AI wave. But in the thing about it, when you incorporate that into payments and the kind of programmatic kind of capability you have with stablecoins, how powerful it can be. But we'd love to get your views as well, because ultimately we are in Southeast Asia. So in your view, what are some of the challenges that we have to overcome before we reach mass adoption? Or if anyone that's trying to build something in this field right now, what can we prioritize?
Yeah, I would say that agentic commerce and agentic payments has exploded a little bit onto the scene. And sometimes I feel like the industry is also just akin to overhyping some of it. So my best sense is that this is one of those classic, we're going to overestimate what we can do in the short term and vastly underestimate what this is going to look like in the long term. But the green shoots here really are that the first principles of this is that AI agents are becoming more empowered. We move on from just basic ChatGPT style Q&A to having the thought over open clock, like agentic actions that agents are taking on our behalf. And so the natural extension is that, okay, then how do we have agents pay for things, resources, commerce and whatnot on our behalf in order to achieve sort of these objectives we're trying to do, whether on a personal or on a business level. From there, it follows that for agents to be able to do these payments, because AI agents are internet and digital native, they need a digitally native form of money. And that's where we see this kind of symbiotic combination of AI agents being empowered with like crypto wallets funded by stablecoins that they can then go and, let's say, pay for some sort of a firewall resource or some sort of an API call that's a micropayment. It can be infinitely programmable, composable. That's in a machine kind of language understanding that like agents can manipulate much easier. The current flow of accessing APIs today is like a human goes and creates a login, attaches a payment method, and then goes and accesses. But that works for us, maybe, even that's a little high friction. But if you really want to unleash the power of agents, I think what we see is that they really have to be stablecoin funded payments. So on that front, what we've done is we've introduced this protocol called X402, which was written by one of our lead engineers. We have this kind of skunkworks division within Coinbase that sort of works on these things. We've open sourced the protocol. It's been incubated into a foundation along with Cloudflare. And it's basically just a simple open standard that's neutral, where anyone can just kind of use that spec in order to start instantiating payments that are driven by agents. So that's the first step. We're seeing other big companies jump into the fray as well. We're working with Google, with Stripe, with Visa and others, because I think we're all trying to work towards the same future, where the agents are this new economic actor on the internet. And the way things are going, there's one scenario which I think is probable, that agentic commerce is going to be bigger than like human-driven commerce in the future.
I think it's fascinating what you guys are building on the infrastructure layer to then invite more actors or participants to build on top of it. And if you think about it, a lot of times if we look at technology waves, new innovations in technology actually increases the overall activity and overall total addressable market of a certain industry, be it payments now, or you talk about in the space of wealth management and investments, when you have things moving from the brick and mortar space to the digital space, and then now to tokenization, you are bound to get bigger penetration and bigger activity from both institutional and retail. And fascinating to see what you guys are building there. But perhaps I think we move on into another area, right? Specifically around risk, right? While I think we've seen digital assets taken wider acceptance from institutions and mainstream as well. What are some of the biggest risks, right, for companies, for actually our listeners, right, traders, or they're building, right? What are some of the bigger risks that they have to keep their eye out on as they continue this momentum?
This is an evolving, fast-growing area that is both technology-enabled and within a financial services perimeter for some of the work that happens. So I think there's a number of considerations that fall out of that. So for builders and entrepreneurs, what I would say is that depending on maybe what kind of a problem you're trying to solve and how you want to configure your stack, I do think that especially stablecoins around like areas of payments, cross-border payments, payouts, anything that really is going across borders in particular, has extremely high both product market fit and also just technology problem fit. I would encourage builders to really look at stablecoins again. The mix shift of payments flow between wires and kind of card funded versus stablecoins is really lopsiding towards stablecoins over time. So that network effect of origination and acceptance is being built out in real time. So it's something to pay attention towards and a trend that you can really write off. I do think that regulatory clarity really matters. So even in Singapore, there is a new single currency stablecoin framework that is being introduced and should come out hopefully sometime this year. That'll just provide further assurance that like stablecoins that you're using, if they're licensed under could be Genius or Mika or here, you just have more assurance that they're fully reserved and they're backed by high quality liquid assets, and there's going to be attestations and audits and everything like that. So that allows you to put more investments and scale over time as well. There are, I think, other nuances that are less discussed. Things around like clarity around like tax positions. Then in Singapore, it's maybe less of a concern because capital gains is not so much an element of the tax regime here. But in many other countries, people are still grappling with this. If I convert a stablecoin back to the underlying, and let's say in the secondary market, there was like a 0.01 like differentiation. Do I now have to track tax for that? Or you also need like ERP integrations from an operational risk perspective of this is all going to flow through my existing system. You don't want to go and build out your back end. So all that work is being done. I think there are vendors in the market today that can help you achieve those. But those are just some things to look up.
Actually, on tech side, especially now today, people are talking about interest-bearing stablecoins as well, right?
Yeah.
So then you mix the security and the money alternative.
Yep.
And then that's where I guess it creates some areas that we just have to watch out for, especially move in that direction.
That's right. And I think that's one of those things of you can choose to take on more risk, but you then just need to do the work to understand what kind of risk could be not just regulatory risk, but it could be a liquidity risk, it could be some kind of other kind of enforcement actions that could arise if it's deemed to be like a collective investment scheme. I think those can maybe allow you to get ahead by offering it early, but then just understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, exactly. But also bring up the point you mentioned around audit trails. Right? I think the thing around stablecoins is only as trustable as to the point in which you are ensured that it is fully backed one-on-one, the reserves fully liquid and things like that. I think that's really key in the adoption of stablecoins and moving from the single currency stablecoin framework. We'd love to get your views on the role of stablecoins in driving wider usage. I think particularly Coinbase has a partnership with StraightSex, which is one of our portfolio company as well. So we'd love to understand from your perspective how this is perhaps playing a very important role.
So the way I would set the stage is that today stablecoins are at roughly about 312 billion at last count in terms of TVL. And by all projections, this is basically there's a secular tailwind here. It's going to grow by multiples over the coming years because of the increasing rates of stablecoin adoption that we're seeing. Again, in the US, now that like Genius has been announced, stablecoins like USDC, which are highly trusted, and once Genius is implemented, will most probably be Genius compliant. I think that just gives that institutions in particular that assurance that this is fully reserved, it's backed, it's audited, and all that good stuff. Beyond USD stablecoins, I think this is another exciting theme for builders and entrepreneurs as well, of this area of local stablecoins or non-USD stablecoins. So the thesis here is that today in the on-chain economy, USD-backed stablecoins constitute about like 98% of total stablecoin PVL. But if you look at traditional FX markets, USD is about like 65% of reserves and about 85% of like trading volume. So if you expect that crypto markets and traditional markets are going to converge, then the on-chain FX market and traditional FX markets are also converge to the same levels. And so by corollary, non-USD stablecoins should actually outperform USD stablecoins. The reasons for why that also should happen is goods and services are priced in local currency. And so as there's more cross-border flow, both on e-commerce and P2P, eventually, right now they're getting liquidated into local fiat currency. But as the circular economy becomes more stablecoin oriented, I think both users and merchants will just choose to keep it in stablecoin so that they can deploy it forward. So coming to StraightSex, I've known Tianwei, the founder, for a while. We were very excited about the potential for StraightSex's XSGD to be accessible on Coinbase Singapore and Coinbase Global. So we worked with them to strike up a partnership where we announced it at SFF last year of XSGD is available on Coinbase, not just Singapore, but Coinbase Global as a global order book. And then in Singapore, you can redeem XSGD 1-for-1 to SGD. So on the retail side for consumers, we'll just basically take away that friction of thinking about Do I have XSGD on my balance or SGD? So it's a starting point. We're excited to grow this partnership. But over time, we think about all the ASEAN stablecoins and beyond as becoming more liquid and more interoperable with better liquidity on these different pairs that can be done on the blockchain.
That's so important, especially if you launch a local stable coins, right? You need access for the retail or to participants in the whole ecosystem to be able to do that exchange. And that's where I think Coinbase is doing great work. And I love the example you talk about between the stable coin, local fiat, and the stable coin, how people are keeping it. And I think in one of your past podcasts, you mentioned this thing called a crypto sandwich.
For example,
That's
right.
I think that's very interesting because quite a clarifying mental model. Where in this case, it's like half a sandwich. It goes to a stable coin and then it stays there, right? And then there's continued participation in the stablecoin economy.
That's right. Yeah. So it's maybe like an open face sandwich.
Open-face sandwich. Yeah. But zooming out a bit from StraightX, I'm sure our listeners also love to learn also for other fintechs, they're trying to collaborate with Coinbase, right? What are some areas of partnerships that they could look forward to with Coinbase? What are the areas of priorities that someone who is looking to work with you could think about?
So in Singapore, we're providing these regulated services onshore, right? So for consumers, credit investors, and even now businesses, we allow you to on-ramp and off-ramp both Sing dollar and USD. We allow you to do send receives. We have great trading products if you want, but we also support USDC in a very meaningful way along with XSGD. So that gives us this very kind of interesting core set of features that you can use for different use cases. And then along with Singapore, we're also registered in Australia. We actually just opened up in India. We have a MiCA license in Europe, where we have licenses in Canada. We're open in Brazil. And then we're obviously dominant in the US. So we also have this big international footprint with both consumer distribution. And then we also have 30,000 plus institutions that are onboarded with us. So we're very fortunate that we have the scale within the crypto economy, and we get to have this two-sided distribution. We have a liquidity kind of marketplace as well. We have our own blockchain base, which is based of X4 too. So there's a bunch of these capabilities that we are excited to also just externalize and provide to different partners and clients and other kinds of businesses in the space. So when we think about partnerships, so there's a few different things. So one is that we have this product called Crypto as a Service. So that's basically a white label externalization of our core features that anyone can use if they want to light up different crypto features within their platform. So think of it as like a B2B2C product. So we've announced that with PNC Bank in the US, for example. There's a few that even regionally that are in the pipeline that we're hoping to be able to announce this year. So that's one. The second would be any other stablecoin issuers that want to launch on Base or eventually on Coinbase. We're always excited to support those as local stablecoin plays. And then for payments companies, we do have specific payment solutions like payment APIs and SDKs that they can use to plug into like an acceptance product where they can get access to our consumer distribution, all the stored balances that we have on the Coinbase platform, they can use for easy checkouts on their platform as well.
That's interesting because I think in the end of the day, Singapore is definitely a good base, and it is a place where there's high trust in the regulatory framework, and the regulators, of course, very forward-looking to drive more collaborations. But the broader South Asia that we live in, right, it's actually one of the most highly active markets with high crypto participation, where the young user or digitally native user, their first participation in capital markets is actually maybe through a stablecoin and cryptocurrency, and less of a local fiat. And that's very interesting because if you think about what you can build from there, right? Not only in terms of participation, in terms of capital, right?
Yeah.
For a user in, let's say, Indonesia who wants to invest and wants to look beyond the local fiat kind of options. But also from a utility perspective. And I think that's testament to some of the amazing work you guys are doing with, again, I think Base in the region as well.